Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nichman.
Our guest today is Derrick Webb, former CEO of Webb Asset Management. Lost almost everything in the crash of 2008, the shakeup forced him to reevaluate his priorities and reinvent himself. Today he shares about his experiences and how he came to creating Triple S Ranch as well as his other properties. Find out more about Derrick and Triple S Ranch at triplesranchnapa.com. Hi, Derrick. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you today?
Hey, Christina. Very well. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm glad to have you out here today. We're going to talk about getting reconnected to what's important in our lives. We're on go, go, go mode, a lot of us, and I know myself included. I go work out in the morning. I go work with my clients. I run home. I cook dinner for my husband, and we start all over again, and we forget to slow down and what's really important. And you have a wonderful place where people can get together, get connected to nature again. You have a ranch. And it's a Triple S Ranch in Napa Valley. And I'm going to have you share with the audience a little bit about the backstory here. What brought you to creating the ranch?
So basically, Christina, like so many things in life, I kind of fell into this. So I was a Wall Street guy. I worked on Wall Street for over 30 years. I had helped build some big companies and built some companies myself. Mm-hmm. And in 2008, I basically lost almost everything with the downturn. My company basically, did not exist after that. And I was 50, I guess I'd be early 50s. Mm-hmm. And I had worked at some pretty high levels on Wall Street. And I just realized that I was really not going to be able to return to what I had done. Just because of kind of the seniority and just being caught in a bad place at a bad time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have the capital to keep my company going. Mm-hmm. The Federal Reserve didn't come in and bail me out. I was a small guy. So I had to decide, what I was going to do. And it was a very challenging time in my life. Mm-hmm. I had another ranch that was really a vacation property up on the California coast, beautiful place, which I call my Vermont farm. I grew up in New England, and it reminds me a lot of where I grew up. Mm. And I had just gotten into the wedding business on that property, and I realized it was a very, very good business. I realized that young people today, you're from Brooklyn, you would totally get this, that, have money. They want things that are cool. They don't want things necessarily that are showy. They don't necessarily when they get married, want to go to the Four Seasons ballroom or things like that. They want to go somewhere really, really cool. And I realized there just aren't that many cool places. And my ranch that I had bought and renovated, I renovate out of old salvage that I collect from all over the world. A lot of it actually comes from New York. They just flock to. So I thought, you know what, this is a great business, and maybe I shouldn't go back to Wall Street and just do this. So then I bought another property after that, and that is now my life.
Wow. I'm sure when you were going through it in 2008 and things were falling apart, and I remember for myself, things were really hard back then. I had just started my business and thought it would be easy. I don't know what I was thinking. But nothing is easy getting started and building it, but especially at that time. But it's interesting. I learned so much about myself going through the experience. What did you most learn about the experience and about yourself, going through the downturn and change?
Yeah, so it was a hellacious period of life, and there's a great saying, I don't know who said it, that a man does not know himself until he looks into the abyss and sees nothing. And literally, that's where I was. Mm. And I also got hit with cancer, and I got the whole McGillicuddy, right? Yeah. So really, I just kind of thought to myself, well, Jesus, I only have so many years left in life, and what do I want to do with it? And I realized, I've always loved the outdoors. It's been my primarily love. I've always loved history. I've always loved farms and the way that people used to live an agrarian existence, with great dignity, which no city dweller understands today. Yeah. And I realized, this is a really good business, very good business. And it would give me everything that I need in life and more, and there'd be no stress. So anyway, I just said to myself, you know what, I'm going to do this. And the hardest thing was actually letting go of my ego. That was the hardest thing. So
really?
Oh yeah. So, when you are invested in a career, let's say that you are quite good at,
Mm-hmm.
and, where you can make a lot of money and talk about how good you are and that kind of thing. And particularly for men, I think it's something we're all heavily invested in. To let all that go and to do something totally different. That was the scariest part. It was really my ego. And in letting go of my ego, I realized that there was a whole other world for me beyond that. And now I see life very differently, and I experience it very differently.
That's really interesting, Derrick, because I recall when I made the big shift to changing from going from a corporate job and then creating my own business. And then now this whole radio show becoming its own separate business, a whole separate entity, which I would have never expected. My identity started to change, and it's weird because you hold on to the other stuff because oh no, that's who I am. We kind of a lot of times hold on to our jobs or the lifestyle we're living is who I am as a person, and we're such greater beings than just the job we do from 9 to 5. I mean, we can do many things in life. We don't have to do just one thing for the rest of our lives. And it's interesting that you're able to discover that, hey, I did that was great, but here's another life for me here.
Yeah, I think it's not easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you're going to be successful, but
Mm-hmm.
I look at all my friends maybe that have stuck with their traditional jobs, and as they retire in one form or another, it'll be interesting,
Mm-hmm.
what they will find themselves doing, because of course, you have to be interested in things in life, and if you're not, you're kind of doomed. And if you're really interested in something, of course, that's the greatest position to be in. So. Yeah, so I was just in a way lucky. I like to say I didn't make these decisions out of bravery. I was thrown off the horse. I didn't get off the horse. The horse threw me off, and I couldn't get back on. So
Wow.
I had to figure out what I was going to do. So so created this new life, and it's also I created a whole new industry. Really, I mean, if you think about the boutique hotel industry, which in Lower Manhattan now, as you would know, is quite big.
Yeah.
I looked in, and it's a lot cooler than staying at, the Ramada or the Marriott or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Not that those aren't cool, but anyway, the point is that I thought to myself, why doesn't that exist in the country? And really all the stuff we've been doing, it's all about events, destination weddings, it's health and wellness, it's corporate retreat stuff. And then, that's a huge growing world and growing market, and it's very organic and it's very authentic, and it's really fun. It's really fun to work in something now that you add a ton of value in to people's lives, and you're also kind of a kid in a candy store. It's not like a job. I haven't set an alarm now for 10 years, yet I wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning. So I guess that's quite a blessing.
Man, that's awesome. And what's great about that, I've heard of people who've done whatever job it might be. I mean, let's say you're a corporate pilot and you love your job and you've done that for 20 years. And now you've gotten to the point where, okay, according to the industry, I have to retire at 65. And if you have no other interest that you've built up, and you're like, and then, now you have to stop it. You're like, okay, now what? And I've heard it, doctors or other professions who just totally are like married to their profession. When it ends, a lot of the time, shortly after retirement, they end up getting sick or dying because there's no more interest in my life. There's nothing that I have passion for. And that's so sad because life is so intricate and deep. There's so many different pathways, and using our gifts and talents, there's so many different areas we can use it in different ways.
Well, I would agree with what you just said. It's 100% true. I think it's very challenging for people today because we're trained so narrowly in what we do, right? And people don't have the diversity of interests that they did before. And with technology, to me, it's obvious that their interests are going to be narrower and narrower because, we're addicted to our phones and our iPad, and our life is our fantasy through technology, right? It's not about doing other things. Like I was fortunate enough as a boy that I had a grandfather who, though he was a corporate guy, he was, old school. He grew up in Kansas and he knew how to do everything. And as a young boy, I got to hang out with him and I learned how to build things, make things, from wood to electronics to this and that to metal. And so though I never did it professionally, that's now all the things that I'm doing now. And so that's just a blessing that I got when I was younger that now I'm tapping into. But I think it's really important to, have those interests. And I have a view of the world that is getting very narrow, and they just don't see the diversity of interests that maybe we saw in the past. And that's one of the things I try to celebrate on my properties. In other words, I renovate out of salvage. I collect all these amazing things. Imagine if you tore a building down in Brooklyn that's, irreplaceable. I go and literally buy all those parts, and then I rebuild out of them in the country. And the reason I do that is because they speak volumes to me, and the craftsmanship and the ingenuity and, the labor and the love of doing something correctly, to me, is something I don't see every day today. And so I like to celebrate that. Or another way I like to say it is, I try to remind people of everything they've forgotten. That's one of the slogans of our ranches.
Yeah. And what it is, there's a beautiful story and history behind those things that I think as a total culture and world, we're losing. We're getting connected and moving so fast paced. They're worried about the story right here at this 1 second. How about the story of our grandparents? And I mean, when I look at pictures, my mom died last year, and they put up pictures of my mom as a child hanging out with her mom. And I saw these really old black and white pictures. I was like, it was like going back in time. And I was like, wow, what was it like? What was she like, my great grandma? How did she see life? And I think there's something lost. I don't know if you saw this. There was something on TV, Derrick, a number of years ago called Pioneer World or Pioneer something, where they would take modern people and put them and have them live like they were pioneers going out into the Old West and living like they did then when they would like go off to California and build log cabins and live without any modern appliances or technologies or anything like that, live off the ground. And it was interesting. They took normal average citizens, and especially the children were like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored. I don't have any of my electronics, my iPhone, my Xbox, whatever. And at first, everyone was super miserable. It's like, what do I do with my time? I'm so freaking bored. I'm cold. I got to go get my own wood. I'm tired. But the kids, by the end of the time, the kids were much easier to adapt to the lifestyle.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, but the kids, what I thought was so cool, were like making toys. They were like, getting really, really creative and finding ways to entertain themselves like we used to do when we were kids. Yeah, just go out there and make our fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's kind of the whole thing. The whole thing is, what I try to celebrate, and I live a different life now, is, I don't want to sound too artsy fartsy, if you will, but it's really, being, it's just being, right? And like today in California, we have the skies full of smoke and this and that, but it's actually really beautiful. It's, first of all, it's natural. Fire's natural. It reminds me a lot of being in India. I love when I go to India, and it's just, you can never see the sky for days and days and days because all that kind of humidity and smoke just sits there, and the colors are gorgeous right now. And, it's a beautiful day, right? So it's enjoy the day, but really feel the day. And, last night there was a beautiful moon. And, what I realized is that when you become the way we all live now, which are just completely consumed by technology, we just don't live and we don't feel. And it's a luxury to be able to do what I'm doing. I readily admit that. But I also realized that a lot of people just want to get back to basics. And so that's what these properties are all about from an event point of view and authenticity. And, I'd say like just living in Brooklyn, like I literally just had a tractor trailer come from upstate New York last week. We just finished unloading it because that's where we get all this crazy old stuff. And, if somebody living in New York City or any city, drive out of the country and look at the farms that people built. Look at the beauty of those buildings, whether it be the farmhouse or the barns or the stone walls or the little towns with all the great brickwork. And, the thing that amazes me about America in the past, or all parts of the world in the past, is that people invested in the future. They invested in beauty, and they didn't have to. We live in a society today that's all about getting from A to B as quickly as possible. It's all about efficiency. And they could have been more efficient. They didn't have to create all that beauty. When you go to Europe, nobody had to create that beauty. Nobody has to build a beautiful church. It's a different philosophical view of the world. And it's not about efficiency. It's about really about creating beauty and living a beautiful life. And that's what I'm trying to remind people of, is that it's, we take, to me, in the modern era, we're trying to get from A to B as quickly as possible and with the least effort possible. And that is very different than the way people lived in the past. It's hard for me to even understand how they think. You go to Vermont and you just look at all that beauty, and it was a tough place to live. It was tough to eat. It was tough to go to the bathroom. It was tough to clean your clothes. But yet, then they did all this amazing stuff on top of it. That's not the way we think today.
Yeah, and that might go. There was a guy I had on several years ago who talked about the age of mediocrity, and not just here in the United States, but around the world. This idea of we just build stuff to build it, but not to build it,
Yep.
as you said, right and well, but just to get it done. And then we're like, well, my iPhone keeps breaking, or my shoes don't stay on my feet more than 3 months. It's like, well, we all come with the same attitude of let's just get there to get it done. And I'm like, to get done, to go where? Where are we going so fast? What do we need to get to so quickly? Because at the end of the day, do you want to feel like you had did the best possible job and gave your all, or do you just want to feel you got there?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I think we live in a something to nothing time. Meaning
something to nothing. Wow.
We first of all, what is the end game? That's a great question. I asked myself that question. I worked on Wall Street. When you work on Wall Street, every guy, it's just to be richer than the next guy. And, that is an end game. That's to keep score. If that's what turns you on, that's fine. That's not, I don't judge people, but you really have to ask yourself, is that really your highest and best use in life? Is that really something that's great? And what I'm constantly amazed at is in previous generations, people invested in future generations. Okay. When they built those avenues in New York City, there were horse and buggies. Why did they make them so wide? When they built the Brooklyn Bridge, why did they make it so wide? The Golden Gate Bridge, where I live in San Francisco, is 6 lanes across, and it went to nowhere. Literally Marin County, where it went, there was nothing there. It was just ranches. The reason is because they were thinking about the future, and they were investing in future generations. Why, when they built the building, the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building, did they make it so beautiful? I mean, today, the lipstick buildings in New York or whatever they are, they're just, I'm not trying to say something is prettier than other, but let's just get real. It's just about, I want the most with the least amount of effort.
Yeah.
And in the past, people built things, or go to any church in New England or anywhere in the country, they used to build churches everywhere. I mean, my God, they're just works of art. Every town had, 5 of them, right? We couldn't build one today if we tried. Or if we did, it'd be the cheapest, most efficient thing we would build. The point is, that's a very, well, and it's not only is it poorly constructed, but it's not built for future generations. We are a very selfish point in our history where it's all about current consumption. I don't want to go into bigger philosophical things, but we're going to debt to the moon, and our government and everything. We're like a bunch of spoiled children, and I truly believe that. Yeah. And we don't invest in the future. We could care less, and that is very different than all other generations. And that's another thing that I'm trying to show people. It's like IKEA is the #1 store in the United States, right? I mean, for furniture, right? It's junk. It literally is junk. I mean, they'll tell you it's junk, and that's okay. And people will invest in junk because it's cheap and it's efficient. Again, nothing wrong with that, but you just have to ask yourself, really?
And what I find amazing, Derrick, is when you find something that's a masterpiece, that's made from the heart and took a lot of effort and months to make. $3,000, I ain't paying that much for that. I could get something way cheaper in my house. Yes, you could. It would be junk. You want junk, or you want a masterpiece in your heart, in your house? It's like, good quality stuff costs, and you got to be willing to pay for it. Maybe you save up for it if it means something to you. But how do we get our society back where people get in touch with themselves, with each other, and with being their best, their greatest, instead of just living to barely exist? How do we get back to that?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to. Personally, I think everything goes through cycles, and I think we are in the cycle of what's just called selfishness. And I think it will last a very, very long time. And I think it will get worse and worse and worse, just to be honest with you.
Really?
And,
wow.
Well, we have a saying in our family. It's called shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And what that means is that, one generation starts off with nothing, and because you have nothing, you have to work incredibly hard just to have something, right? You have no choice. So that would be like a classic immigrant coming to the United States. They come here with nothing.
Yes.
So they have no choice but to make something work. Then they have their kids, and those kids, mom and dad work very, very hard. And they start off with nothing, and they see them have a little bit more and more over time. And chances are those parents want to give them the best education they can, because again, they want to make their lives better.
Okay.
And so they do that. And then those kids grow up, and then they have more, and then they raise their kids, and maybe they start spoiling their kids because now they have something, and their kids grow up and they're spoiled rotten and don't appreciate everything, and then maybe lose it all, and the cycle repeats itself. So it's a saying we have in our family, and I personally believe that we're just in a very spoiled part of the cycle, and people, necessity is the motherhood of all invention. I didn't start, again, what I did because it was some idea. I had no choice. And that's the way lots of things are started in life. I'm a believer in the school of hard knocks, and I believe, the soul only comes out when things are difficult, not when they're easy. So unfortunately, I think until things become difficult, I don't think anything will change, and I think it will get worse. And I think technology makes things, in a sense, easier. It can make us all more disconnected. So I don't know. I don't want to just say, hey, some panacea, hey, we're building these ranches because we're going to solve all the world's problems. We're not. I mean, we're just doing it because it's something that's very positive. It's a very small thing, but truthfully, in a big sense, I think we're in a cycle, and that's just where the cycle's headed.
Yeah. And this brings to mind for me, I don't often watch kids films, but I watched WALL-E several years back, and it had an interesting message. In the message, the characters were fat, dumb, and happy, as it were. And they were kind of just connected to their entertainment centers and just like focused on that so much. They didn't see everything falling apart around them, that they were getting fat, unhealthy, that life was pretty, non-existent. Until WALL-E, this annoying little creature machine thing, kind of jolted their world. And at first they were unhappy about it. They're like, whoa, I like being fat, dumb, and happy and asleep. And then when he jilted and got everyone awake, it like changed the world for the better. And it was an interesting message that they were trying to show people that I think today we're kind of that fat, dumb, and happy group where we don't realize that we're heading for kind of destruction of our own selves because we're not really living to our fullest, grandest potential. And like you said, until things become hard and we're jilted back into reality, like for you when you had cancer and lost, your Wall Street job and career, that then you begin to like, okay, now what? I'm totally lost. You're, as you said, thrown off the horse. And a lot of the people that come to the show, that happened for them in different ways, an accident, cancer, parents dying, whatever it might be, that you begin to say, okay, now what? What is life really about?
Yeah, I think your WALL-E one, I think I remember that one. I use the word Oompa Loomp. There's a Dr. Seuss one. I think they're called the Oompa Loomps.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Big fat people, and it's again, technology can lull you to sleep. Because really, all you need is a chair and a screen, right? And you, in theory, can be happy.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't like to say, hey, it's bad or it's stupid. But again, it's efficient, right? I mean, an architect of mine. I love this. So he builds and flies model airplanes, right? So it's a lot of work to build a model airplane correctly and fly it and all that kind of stuff, right? And so we were talking one day, and we're talking about technology. We were talking about how he was talking with his son, and his son said, "Hey, Dad, I fly airplanes." And the dad said, "What are you talking about? I've never seen you with a model airplane or do anything." Or he was hoping his son would get into his hobby. And he goes, "Oh yeah, Dad, I do exactly the same thing." And what his son was doing was flying, on his iPad, right? Like, virtually some game.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting, right? So, what is real? The guy who's really flying an airplane, right? The guy who's flying a model airplane, or the guy who's flying an airplane on his computer? I mean, effectively, you could say they're all the same, but it's just one's perspective of how one does things. And I think just one has to be very careful with technology, because I do think it's very obvious to me that this whole thing's going to get worse and worse and worse. I think we're in such early innings of how we will all live our lives and how disconnected we will become because of technology. And I think, it's something will reinvent itself. I just don't know what it is, but I just think I look at the trends and we're in the cycles. Whatever happens after that is, that's a hard one.
Yeah. Well, what's amazing to me, Derrick, I ended up taking flying classes and lessons because I found it fascinating, and I was scared to death of it. So my pure reason was like, I want to get rid of this fear because I like to travel. But I was first, practicing on a sim, and where it's not the same as being in an airplane, but any stretch of the imagination, it was helpful because my mindset was that I'm going to use the skills I'm getting on this flight sim to bring them into the real cockpit. But the one thing I would say that's different from television, where your brain is going through the story and you feel like you're in it, I don't really feel like you're experiencing it through all of your body. It's like your mind's experiencing it, but you got a whole body to work with and bring your whole self into it. And I think that's what's lost with modern technology. If you're just living it through an iPad, you're not experiencing your whole body and self. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, well, of course.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just being philosophical, just saying it's obvious to me, like the Oompa Loomps, where all this goes. And you have to really be very disciplined and push back to not be that way. And again, you know, necessity is the motherhood of all invention, and hardship creates, you know, much more necessity. And, you know, when you don't have it, there's, you know, again, why not just grab your iPad, sit in a chair? And nothing I want to do, but you get the point.
Yeah. Now, what I would think most people listening into our conversation today would like to not have to go to hardship before life gets more authentic and real, and where they're really engaged more in it. What would you suggest to, you know, people who feel disconnected or don't feel like they're living their grandest, most potential? Where do they get started? Because I don't think they should have to wait for cancer or losing a job or a loved one. Yeah.
You know, we all gravitate towards different things and what makes our kind of psyches work. And I'm a very visual person. I mean, I'm waiting here to go to yoga class, so there's something, but I don't need to talk about that. I think most people understand exercising, but I think perspective. I always try to look at perspective, right? So, and I always try to think when I look at something, what people must have been thinking about when they did it. And what I mean by that is I traveled around the world this last spring, and you know, if you're in Angkor Wat in Cambodia and you just look at this thing that they built in the jungle, you know, one of the greatest ruins of the world, and there were, I don't know, 30,000 people working there with primitive tools, et cetera. And you think, what were they thinking about? Or when I'm in New York City, and I'm in the New York City subway, and, you know, just how beautiful that was built, and the ironwork, and we're in a park in New York City or Brooklyn, and you look at all the, you know, the iron work and whether it's the park benches or the fences or the trees or you look at any building in New York City anywhere, and you think, gosh, now what were these people thinking about? And I always try to remove myself from the current world because I think it's very hard for us to get outside of ourselves. And then I look at what other human beings should do, and I think, my God, did they do a lot, you know? So my ranch in Mendocino, it was built by a guy from Maine, and, you know, he leaves Maine, he goes around all the way around the Horn, he goes up to the Gold Country, he sails, you know, that couldn't have been easy, right? Then he goes down he came from a logging family and goes down the coast and starts, you know, cutting these huge redwood trees. I mean, just to even cut one of those things down and move it is completely unimaginable, even to myself, right? And then he builds this beautiful house on the ocean, and he didn't have to be beautiful. Again, it could have been functional, you know, it was a lot of work then just to do anything. But yet they did it. And so I always try to put my mind and think, my God, I mean, what did that guy do when he woke up in the morning and how much he did? And I think one of the things we have to realize is we have very passive lives. And I think you just have to force yourself out of passivity, however that works for you. And I don't think it's easy for people. My one suggestion I just have is wherever you live, look at things historically. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you live in Georgia or Texas or Montana or whatever. You can see all around you what human beings used to do. And if you think about the work that must have gone into that and the attitude, and then check that against your own, something might trigger in your mind. That's what I do a lot. I just look around and think, my God, I mean, what were these people thinking about in a positive way?
Wow.
Because, you know, let's get real. None of us have to do any of that today. We can just, you know, watch another television program.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And just last week, I ran across a video, a 1905 video on Coney Island that someone had shot. And it was 20 minutes worth of film. And it was fascinating seeing the people. I mean, it was amazing how much they dressed to the hilt. And they're just average citizens walking around, but they're just beautifully. And today we just throw on some sweats, go outside, go to Coney Island, get a hot dog. But they put so much effort just to put themselves out there on a daily basis, even if they're not going to a job, just walking around. And I was just fascinated watching that film. And you're right. I think just looking at stuff like that, or even putting your mind in that, like, what is that like being there, right then? If I were to step through a time machine, walk out there, what would it be like to be there and live there and experience it? Yeah.
Well, I just think, as you just said, I mean, people used to go to church and dress in their finest, right? I watched a great documentary recently about, I forget the gentleman's name. He was, one of the great, like, black, he was very unusual. He's from the South. He was a black guy, and he was gay. This goes back in the 50s. I think it was the 60s. And he became one of the biggest fashion editors for all these magazines. And, it's pretty remarkable that this guy who came from nothing achieved what he did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were interviewing him, and they're asking him, well, why would you even know anything about this, right? And he said, well, though we came from no money in the South in a tiny little town, everybody would dress up in their finest on Sunday. And he said it was a huge thing, right? And I grew up with that for 20 years. And so again, you just think about that for a second, and the way we would approach Sunday today, and the way they would approach it, right? Or if you go back even to the 1890s, I collect old photographs, and these people are living in the wilderness, and they would dress up. And my God, they didn't have a lot of free time to do anything. And to dress up was a hell of a lot of work. How you iron something or clean something was all done by hand, but they would do it. And it's that resolve and that determination and that, I call it, respect of life, that is something that we don't have today because we don't have to have it. And again, that's what efficiency creates. It creates patheticness. And again, it's not bad. We don't have to do that, right? But you have to. That's why I try to always pull myself out of that and ask myself, wow, am I really performing at my best? And I challenge myself all the time. And, I like your guy who came on and talked about mediocrity. I mean, I think I build these crazy properties and I really push it because I'm not just trying to build something that's functional. I'm trying to really stimulate people's brains. And, people probably think I'm crazy or call me out there or whatever. And I think, well, okay, in their common sense, that's completely true. But isn't that what life's about? I mean, when they built the Empire State Building or the Brooklyn Bridge or anything, forgetting even the efficiency or the Taj Mahal, why do we love these things? Why are they so amazing to us? Because somebody really pushed themselves. And I think it's always important to keep that in mind. And it's a constant challenge. I mean, the tide is against you, and you have to have strong things around you to help you fight the tide.
Wow. I like that you mentioned that, respect for life. And you hear so much about different folks fighting for the rights of others, and there's this injustice, that injustice, this victim, that victim. And how about we just focus on ourselves, being our best, and having respect for life in general. And it's interesting, just stepping out of the house in your best, your finest. Like, I just don't sort of do things like put on my outfit. I do everything to the best of my ability. I mean, how much respect for life would that give us, and how much different will we approach everything in life if we came at it from that perspective? Fascinating.
My biggest thing today that I just realized in business and personally in everything, I just call it, people say, well, be nice or be honest or be this or be that or whatever, right? Or be, more understanding to whatever it is. And I thought the other day, I was saying, well, wait a minute, it's actually one thing. It's just respect.
Yes.
What do you respect outside of yourself? And when you start to look at life through that lens, and it's weird to me because I'm not a highly religious guy. I mean, I went to Catholic school and stuff like that when I was younger, but respect is not, it's like you would think the word to be, printed everywhere. And it's actually not. I think it's weird. It's about right. It's about wrong. It's about this, it's about that. But I thought, wait a minute, really everything is about respect. If you're walking down the street, you're staring at your phone, there's nothing wrong with that, but, are you respecting the people around you? If you, cut people off, if you're late, if you're, again, I go on and on and on and on. If you write something on your phone and now everything's cryptic and it's not written correctly, you don't need to do that. People understand you, but are you respecting other people? I'm just a really big one for respecting people, and I'm respecting not just people, everything, right? So nature, the beauty of today, my body and going to yoga, whatever it is, right? But the point is, I realize respect is such a simple word, but it has so much power, and I don't think I ever realized how it applies to so many things.
Me either, until you're mentioning it right here, how deep it is. In the age of texters and text phones, cell phones, smartphones, whatever the heck you call them, I really stayed away from it for quite some time. It was like out heavily for 5 years, and I just got one a year and a half ago, and I barely ever text on it. I hate texting, and it's because I go places and people have to have that text. Oh my gosh, I gotta look at it, I gotta answer it. I'm like, put the phone down, we're together, let's pay attention to each other. And you're right, it's so easy to get connected to the technologies that there might be something important in that phone. Listen, before the phones existed, the important stuff you would get to when you get home and you heard your messages or whatever. But it's right about respect of how you dress, how you show up in the world, how you speak to people. A couple weeks ago, I actually put up a post on one of our shows, and I made a spelling error. It was just a mistake. And I got some people who were kind of mean about it. And I was like, yeah, that was dumb of me, but you could be a little bit more respectful in how you tell me about it, eh? But yeah, it's an important word we need to get back to, for sure.
Well, it's just, if you can apply it to almost anything. Again, it's just it's a lens.
Yes.
But I am amazed when I really start, you get out of yourself and you start to think of how you interact with the world. And it is amazing to me how disrespectful, I mean, it's all part of life, right? How disrespectful people can be. But the one thing I hold myself to always is just respect. And I'm not going to say respecting others. That's too simple. Of course we do. But it's respecting everything. I mean, how much respect do you have outside of yourself? And it's interesting when you do that. There's an easy way to change your life. You might be surprised how little respect you have for bigger things around you. It's an interesting lens when you focus it.
I love that. That is a great, great wisdom you passed on to our listeners today. I don't want us to leave without everyone finding out how they can go be part of Triple S Ranch in Napa Valley and expose themselves to a greater life, a more simple life, get back to nature and themselves. How can they do that?
Well, they can. So we are not. We have a funny business. We're not actually open to the public, meaning that we don't book rooms and that kind of thing. It's all events. So if you have listeners that really want to experience one of the most beautiful places in the world, but also a place that's very spiritual and authentic. And what I mean by that is all the things we just talked about. That's the way I kind of build the property with beautiful old things that just resonate with people. And it's indoor, it's outdoors, it's soulful, it's authentic. It's the only way I can describe it. I want to transport people to somewhere where they just don't get to feel these things very often. It's like, we all maybe have gone to some little town somewhere in the world. Maybe it's the south of France or somewhere where we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. That's what I built. And then the usages are all event-based. So destination weddings is huge. We have lots of people who fly out from New York City, as an example, who find us on the internet because they want to go somewhere very, very special for a destination wedding. They don't want something cookie cutter. Corporate retreats. We do lots of corporate retreats, lots of small tech companies and those kind of things. Again, they don't want something rote. Health and wellness. We do lots of yoga retreats and things like that. So those are the three primary usages of my properties, and we're going to keep searching these Shangri-Las out in the United States. Are very hard to find, and we don't run them commercially. It's very different than going to a resort or a hotel. The idea is that it's your property. It's very, very unique. It's very grounded in both nature and history, and then you kind of paint on top of that canvas. It's amazing to me how creative people are that rent it, but then do other creative things on top of it, whether they be weddings or corporate retreats or what have you. And we allow that and we encourage that. And it's a different way to do something, and people that like it just love it. Yeah.
And if they're interested in doing a corporate event, a wedding, how do they get in touch with you?
Just go to the website. Like anything. You just Triple S Ranch, Napa. That's one of the properties.
Okay.
Another sister property we have is called Spring Ranch, Mendocino.
Okay.
Both ranches are these idyllic places and idyllic settings. One is in Napa Valley. One is on the most spectacular part of the coast in Northern California. And you'll simply just go there and everything's there. And And, we have people who come from all over the world because, again, people, they're not stupid. Not everybody, lots of people are searching for authenticity. They're searching for Shangri-La. You live in a city, you live in your apartment, you live in your tract home. People know there's a bigger life out there. And the question is, and they want to access it. The beauty of the internet is it allows them to find these things. You're sitting with a glass of wine at night after work and you're surfing the web and you find these things. And that's kind of how I started the business. I thought, people will find us, and they have. And then we just have had it event-based just because it's just a better business model for us.
Yes. Please give everyone the website.
Yeah. So it's triple S Ranch Napa, just the way it sounds. Triple S Ranch Napa. If you Google it, it'll pop right up. Or that's in Napa Valley. And then the one in Mendocino on the coast is called Spring Ranch Mendocino. That's awesome. Spring Ranch Mendocino.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, this has been a truly fascinating talk. I hope it makes everyone listening in reflect deeper about their lives and how they can bring greater respect to the world, to themselves, and get more in touch with themselves. And I thank you so much for sharing your great wisdom today on Savvy Business Radio. Thank you, Christina.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.